Okay, so hi, welcome to Teens Talk Politics. I'm Julius, and
I'm Neil. Good morning. There are kids in concentration camps at the border. Everyone's afraid of getting shot. The sun is bright. The world is good. Hello.
yep. So to start things off, I think we should look into a problem that has been plaguing our country for such a long time, and it's been like just overlooked. It's a danger that all our children in our small yards are facing today, and frankly, it's only recently been brought to attention. I'm kind of horrified that we haven't addressed this earlier. But like, why aren't we talking about the 30 to 50 feral hogs that are in my yard?
God, no one has come up with a plan other than Marianne Williamson
Oh
herself.
yes,
It is known.
crazy.
It is known by scientists across the nation that only quartz crystals can ward off 30 to 50 feral hogs playing within 3 to 5 minutes of your children. Uh,
Obviously, and yeah, those essential oils are definitely going to help ward them away. But like as a country, I mean, I feel like we like if we have a plan like that, that's just too wonky to ever really work. So I mean, I think we should be straying away from any discussion of that and just focus like on changing our mindset about the 30 to 50 feral hogs. Like I feel like that's the best and only way to actually address the situation.
if we think them away, they will disappear.
All right, but okay.
For all you civic nerds out there, that bill is right on Mitch McConnell's desk, and he's doing nothing about it. So I propose we have a march for our hogs. Thank you.
Right, but like in all seriousness though, like the dangers that we are facing as a country in terms of like gun violence,
People be shooting.
yeah, and just like looking at how much gun violence is happening and how in general like the response has been like tepid at best, like it's sort of worrying how like we might not really be able to get anything done about it anytime soon. And like the thing about like voting out the politicians that are trying to like stand in the way of actual legislation against gun violence, like our voting system is so just like fucked up that even if we do manage to get like a bunch of voters out there to vote against it, it'll probably just get like hacked by Russia or something like that, and it'll be all for nothing. Like,
Absolutely. We've had some great progress here in Connecticut since Sandy Hook. Uh, I'm sure Dayton and El Paso, as well as the whole states, have been mobilized. Uh, Parkland certainly mobilized, but on the national scale, that gets a lot trickier because these Republican libertarian politicians are in the pocket of Big Hog, um, also known as the NRA.
yeah.
I heard a story the other day that after the Parkland shooting, Wayne LaPierre, the chairman of the NRA, he started looking at a $20 million home because he figured it was the best for his safety, given that everyone in America hates his guts.
Which is completely fair to consider.
What?
Like, I wonder why. Like, is it because you're literally supporting making a profit from gun companies against, like, the lives of children?
I
Like,
think it's just because he has a stupid face.
yeah, definitely.
I'm willing to go there.
Or maybe it's because everyone nowadays is just so discriminatory against old white men.
In the spirit
that-
of civil debate, let's not make fun of the way he has enabled dozens and dozens of people to die. Let's talk about his stupid face. I'm Ben Shapiro, and I approve this message. But yeah, I try to remain relatively agnostic on the subject of gun legislation, specifically because it is 3 or 4 sides of a 1,000 side like polyhedron.
yeah.
Because first of all, the people who are complaining about their guns, their right to guns, the ones who fear that the government is going to like rise up and tax their whiskey too much, they're not the ones who are vulnerable and susceptible to gun
Exactly.
violence.
Oh my gosh.
It's the black trans woman who fears for her life in a city. It's students in a school, vulnerable, actual marginalized communities like that. So
Yeah. And
that's
like
one of the sides that we need to address and we need to understand how this kind of legislation affects the vulnerable people. Um, and that's when you get into, the idea of increased background checks, uh, and all that jazz. Because one unintended consequence of this that I worry about is uh, marginalized you know, communities of color not having a framework to defend themselves from state violence, so to speak. And I might be a little hyperbolic here, as an extremely privileged and fortunate person, um, but this I'm of the opinion that we can't go forward unless we directly address like what to do about these not what to do about these vulnerable communities, but how to help vulnerable people. For example, like disarming the police, which I
Yeah.
know now is a relatively radical opinion in the woke Twitter circles that I run in. Not so radical, but certainly amongst moderates and conservatives.
But yeah, like definitely if you look at the people who are supporting like their quote unquote like right to bear arms, which again, like gun legislation, I believe if implemented correctly, it shouldn't be taking away people's freedom to like have some sort of self-defense. And like another one of the dangers, like you brought up marginalized communities, like marginalized communities getting access to self-defense to defend themselves from like police systems and so-called criminal justice that are really more interested in like prosecuting them and killing them than actually protecting them. I think that's definitely important on one hand, but on the other hand, it also like increased like just minorities with weapons. That's something that sounds like a Fox News title. It seems like it would be more used more as like a weapon to further prosecute minority communities. But I totally see the need for this and the need for like some sort of change at least in the way that our communities of color and our communities of like poor people are being treated by police.
The fact of the matter is that I see what you mean. People are dying um, at alarming rates, and don't do something, if we don't even make like a knee-jerk reaction to start curbing that, it's we're all gonna panic. The white liberals are gonna panic. Um, but yeah, there's a certain mindset that we need to assume in order to address this at all angles. Join me, if you will, in assuming the hog mindset. Uh, yeah.
All right, but again, this is something that we sort of mentioned earlier, but in terms of like the again going back to the people that are actually on the other side of the debate who are allegedly thinking that their gun rights are being taken away, or like the libertarians who are like supposedly going insane about not having access to guns anymore, which again won't happen if you are a like fully functional person that isn't intent on like shooting up a crowd anywhere. Like, have you seen that recent tweet with like the person with like a really large weapon gun in like Starbucks or something like that? And like there was I saw it and there was something like, oh, like the three things that'll happen are either you'll feel safer with this person with a large weapon in a coffee shop, or you'll leave the coffee shop, and those are the only two possible options. But the thing is, like, in a world where it's all just like white people, yeah, maybe you'll feel safer in there, or if you are opposed to that, you won't feel safer and you'll just exit the shop. But if you're a person of color, if you're if you're a minority in any way,
If you're a caffeine addict,
like it's simply like just people with weapons. It's a danger in many ways to I mean, like I'm not really phrasing this well, but like a lot of people feel unsafe around like people openly carrying weapons in public, and it's for a very valid reason. It's because they're not the kind of people, they're not like the privileged whiter people that have like been around guns and grown up around guns in, I guess, like a more safe environment, because they're the types of people who have like white people, for example. like their relationship with guns is like, oh, it's for like hunting or for like some sort of I guess like fun, while for people of color and for minorities it's more of a like danger. It's more of a present danger because the gun violence has been like been done towards these specific communities has been started by hatred and like racism. So
I think you just wrote Tucker Carlson's next book, entitled "White America's Intimate Relationship with Firearms." Um, yeah, and that doesn't even like take into account people with trauma. The end goal of most ideologies um, is to live in a society, uh, unless you're an anarcho-primitivist, in which you don't want a society at all, but to live uh, without being in fear of, economic collapse or, having your life threatened. And that's the goal here. Ideally, we would be taking a more multifaceted approach to this, but because these problems have persisted so much, we just have to take action. And I think one thing we haven't really addressed is the white supremacy aspect of this. So what do you think about that?
oh, definitely. That's again something that Republicans have been more than eager to shy away from. Like just in general, I'm kind of well, not kind of like I'm really upset about how Republicans have been turning this around into a quote unquote mental health issue. Like mental health patients, people with mental illnesses are more often the victims than the perpetrators of gun violence, and just like spreading the idea that oh the shooter was mentally ill or this is a problem with mental illness, while again Republicans are the ones who are like doing away with mental health support in like healthcare. Like it's just further perpetrating the stigmas against the mentally ill communities that we really don't need. And that's the same type of, well, not exactly the same, but it's a similar type of hatred that has like begun or started like the violence that we're facing in like the recent shootings in like El Paso and Dayton.
And if you're so worried about mental illnesses, then you might as well address that we as a society are not doing what we can to help those people. And by privatizing healthcare and making like rehabilitation and therapy less and less accessible as we progress, you are part of the problem. I don't know who I'm speaking to, but I hope you feel threatened by this.
Yeah, I know. Like, the thing is, you can't just pull the mental illness card when it's convenient. You can't just use it to distract people from the real problem of white supremacy that's been behind these recent shootings. You can't just, like, pull that out whenever you want to and then just completely ignore it when it comes to people who actually need access to this therapy or who are in need of like more mental health care, and just like ignoring that completely. I don't know, it just doesn't make sense at all.
And like, I'm mentally ill as all hell, and I don't pull the mental illness card as much as these people. And when I do, I'm asked to leave the movie theater because apparently rolling on the floor after Spider-Man Far From Home because I didn't like the movie that much is not acceptable. God.
No, but like, again, going back to the issue of like white supremacy and Republicans trying to distract us from it, like it's just insane when you look at literally the shooter in El Paso made an entire like what was it,
manifesto.
Exactly, that was literally like it was basically a compilation of like 30 to 50 of Donald Trump's most recent tweets. But it's so clear the motivation behind this and the hatred that has fueled it. Like if you look at what Donald Trump said in one of his rallies recently, he literally said like I said literally, but I don't have the quote for this right now. But like someone in the crowd talked about shooting immigrants and shooting illegal immigrants, and he basically endorsed it.
Let out one of his little Trump chortles, you know.
That's the problem. Like it's hatred and like white supremacy that used to exist in the margins of society that are now being echoed and like not verified, but like it's being legitimized by our own president, which is terrifying and bad.
I think I challenge the notion uh, that it existed on the fringes of society. Just and only certain people explicitly, believe in the bell curve. That people of certain races just don't have as high IQs as white people. Obviously, a very well thought out and high IQ idea, if I must say so myself, as an easily impressed low IQ individual. But I think white supremacy is so like it's so integral in the structure of this country. Like,
Yeah, I mean, like
you're the housing and urban development expert. You can speak to how important redlining is in determining the modern housing market, right?
yeah, but like I say that I don't really mean that white supremacy hasn't existed in a major way within like the past few decades.
Might be.
But like just the change again, like people who think that all of this just started when Trump was elected, that's definitely incorrect, and like that's not really like these problems have existed forever, but like there is an element of truth to the idea that Trump has emphasized some of these things. And I mean, obviously, white supremacy and racism have existed in very ingrained forms in our society through laws that we're passing, and like again, redlining, real estate discrimination. That's literally white supremacy, like baked into our living patterns. It's existed forever, but like now, especially compared with more recent years, it's been more legitimized by the people in power in our country. Like, there's a difference between it existing sort of in the background and existing like in basically all the ways that we live in our society, and what it is now, which is it's still all those same things like existing in the background, but it's also being like loudly proclaimed from like Fox News, from Trump, and that's being normalized and that's being shown to be something that's like not really out of the ordinary.
I love the fact that Republicans think all like the old white moderate Democrats are advocating for open borders, and as someone who identifies with a lot of like anarchist theory, that would be a fun time. If I could just leave and come back whenever I want, or something like that. As a young child, I'm not sure how borders work, but it's absolutely absurd what these shitwits are. Can I swear on this?
Yeah, sure.
What these absolute fucking pasty shitwits in their ivory towers who have never worked a real job in their life are saying. And it's causing paranoia and fear amongst the working class, who could quite very easily unite and actually solve the problems that are being perpetuated by these people in their ivory towers who are telling us that immigrants are going to come in and take our jobs, when in reality it's fucking your fault for not investing it. It's your fault for not investing your billions and billions of dollars in American society, in our children, in their safety, in our infrastructure.
And like also like I'm kind of impressed and also shocked by this, but one of like the conservative side of politics biggest achievements, like probably within the past century maybe. Oh, what was that? Never mind. But like I'm sort of shocked that they managed to turn the working class against itself. Like white people that are poor are amongst the most like prolific voters for conservatives and for Trump, while the policy that they are voting for, like taking away their own healthcare, like that's literally stuff that's not helping them at all. But Republicans have managed to convince them that this is somewhat logical, and they're using racism, and they're saying like, oh, immigrants are taking away your jobs, immigrants are doing this, immigrants are doing that, like Muslim people are doing this, and like Mexican people are doing that. But the thing is, like, those aren't supposed to be your enemies, white people of America. Like, it's literally like
your only enemy is gluten.
But I guess this is I'm not really making sense again, but like the working classes are basically being fucked over by privatized health insurance, big corporations, stuff like that. And the white working class isn't really coming to this realization because they've been fed this absolute bullshit from like Fox News, from Donald Trump.
Fucker Carlson is getting in bed with like the white, disaffected working class people of society and just lying out of his goddamn white, shiny, perfect teeth.
But yeah, this is
I think I might be in love with Tucker Carlson.
it's a good segue into
That bow tie.
issues with like racism and immigration, because again, like
Racism is bad. You heard it here first.
but like the demonization of immigrants is also another fun thing that we're dealing with these days. Again, in recent news, ICE a couple days ago, or maybe it was yesterday. I don't even know how time works anymore.
I think I speak for the entirety of the proletariat when I say the only ice I want is on that goddamn wrist. Let's go.
But ICE had like a massive raid in, I think, Tennessee or something like that, or Missouri, wherever it was bad, and they basically just rounded up like 600 to 700 people from a factory, I believe, factory workers, and like again, this is a problem that we're starting to see more and more. Both the demonization of immigrants and also the criminalization of people who are just coming here to work and have a life. Like, a lot of these people who were detained are people with families. They're people who have been living in this country for years. And it's just shocking to see that we're okay with this and that it's just happening, I guess.
Did y'all, and by y'all I mean Julius and the funny looking microphone that I'm talking into, read that story about the man born in Greece, I think, to like Christian Iraqi parents, lived here for like dozens of years. He was recently deported and had type 1 diabetes, and he died.
Because he didn't know the language of the country that he was deported to. He didn't know anything about that country because he was born, well, he lived for a majority of his life in America, like knowing English, living in our own society, and didn't have the tools necessary to actually know what was going on in the country that he was deported to. Like, this is
The fella is about as American as, like, Tumblr.
Yeah, there was also, again, something that happened maybe a few years ago. It was a Korean man who was adopted by white parents. He was born in Korea, adopted by white parents sometime in the 50s or 60s. The parents apparently didn't really file for adoption right or something because he was never made a citizen. But he was also deported back to Korea, where he had literally lived for like maybe 3 or 4 months at most. And like, this is absolutely insane. Like, this is someone who doesn't know Korean, has lived in America for basically his entire life, and is just being deported because of, like, I think it was like he had a few petty crimes in his youth, like shoplifting, or like something like a speed ticket or something like that.
Man, I thought by petty you meant like subtweeting someone.
But like, we're deporting people that are actual Americans and basically ruining their lives, which is fun. Not fun, but I don't know.
It's not fun. We're basically sending these people on like Mr. Bean's holiday, except to countries. Excuse me if this is a little bit xenophobic, but that they're going to suffer in, essentially. That said, I think I'd suffer too if I was sent to France. Thank God Rowan Atkinson had the strength to... Anyway, I'm off topic here.
But yeah, that's kind of terrible, and like, this is sort of tying into DACA and ending a lot of the support for that. Like, the people who are DACA recipients are people who have lived and grown up in America for a majority of their life, and sending them back to Mexico is just like executing the sort of like racist pipe dream that Donald Trump and other Republicans like to like have. I guess that was a weird sentence, but like, it's completely racist in its motives. It really has no benefit to anyone here in America. And it's being treated like these people are criminals when all they've done is just live in this country for their entire lives and like think they're American citizens. And like their only crime is being born in the wrong place. It's sort of insane, I guess. And I don't know.
Yeah, and as an addendum to my Americanist Tumblr statement, I'd like to edit that a little. These people, these DACA recipients, are as American as the 2013 Just Girly Things sect of Tumblr. And I don't know if you guys waste your time on the website at all, but just take my word for it when I say that these people are true patriots.
But yeah, I mean, this goes back to the whole idea of like immigrants being foreigners and treating people who are really Americans as like not American just because of where their relatives were born or where maybe they might have been born. Like it's sort of insane that a second generation immigrant whose parents were born in like Eastern Europe could be treated as a full blown like American person, but like for any other second generation immigrant or for any other immigrant in general, like that deserves a second glance. Like it's like a sort of pepper. I just said pepper, but I meant perpetual foreigner.
Peppa Pig foreigner. I got you.
But like for example, like Japanese immigrants, the first wave of Japanese immigrants came over in the 1850s. That's the same time that like the first wave of Irish immigrants and German immigrants came over. Like, but if you see like a sixth generation Japanese American living in America, that's still a Japanese American because of the color of their skin. But if you see a sixth generation Irish American, they're only an Irish generation. They're only an Irish American
When they're a Republican pretending to be a victim.
Yeah, or if they yelled at you that they were 5% Irish because they just got the results back from their Ancestry.com
Or if
box.
they're pissed drunk on St. Patrick's Day.
But yeah, that's like, it's sort of a problem that immigrants that aren't white or just Americans that aren't white are never really seen as truly American.
I agree, it is sort of a problem.
It's sort of a problem. And like that's sort of but that's what people are using to attack like say like AOC, Ilhan Omar, and like other
Ayanna Pressley,
Ayanna Pressley,
Rashida Tlaib.
Yeah,
I refuse to call them by their colloquial name in Congress because I don't want to feel like a 53-year-old woman.
But like exactly the reason that they're being threatened for their quote unquote Americanness and being told to like go back to where they came from, that's only because of their race, and that's only because they're not white. No white congressperson will probably ever be told to go back to where they came from.
I want Ted Cruz to go back to where he came from. The motherfucker was born in Canada.
But exactly, like it's just I don't know. It's bad.
You know what else? Michael Bennet, the Democratic presidential candidate, was born in New Delhi, India. Send him the fuck back. I don't want him.
But yeah, so
Tim Ryan 2020.
That's great. Our country is super fun. So
we have Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, Chuck E. Cheese. I think his real name is like Charles Entertainment Cheese, I believe. It was a terrifying fact for me to discover, but
I was thinking it was a Charles Economic Collapse Cheese. That certainly makes sense, though. Well, I think we've kind of talked this to death. The moral of the story is get your guns with your fellow immigrants
and kill those 30 to 50 feral hogs. They are threatening your children, and they deserve to be dealt with. All right, well, that was a fun 30 minutes or so. If you like this podcast, please consider listening to it more. And yeah, we'll try to get like some sort of.
We'll probably do this like once every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, maybe. if you're lucky. But yeah, Teens Talk Politics.
Yeah, I feel christened, Julius. You know, I'm finally losing my podcast virginity.
I almost said to myself that this would be a unique perspective on politics, but then I looked at Twitter and realized that we're just saying the things that we retweeted over the past
Come
week.
on, folks. This is Hot Take Central.
But yeah, all right. So come in next week or month or year or whenever this actually gets updated. But yeah, it's great to have people listening. If
We'll
you
see.
are.
We'll see you later, Chiefs. And in the end, the shithole country was us all along. We'll see you later.
Okay, well that's fun. Bye, I guess.